Designs, and welcome back to the Crochet Magical Mystery Tour. This is week 31, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do the crochet herringbone stitch. As far as I know, this is a new stitch. I've never seen this before anywhere. I think you're going to love it, especially if you love the knitted version of the herringbone stitch like I do. This gives you a very, very close approximation of that knitted stitch. So before we get started, if you have a moment to like this video and subscribe and hit the notify bell, I have weekly videos coming out, and this way you'll be sure to catch all of them. So let's start now by me showing you some different versions of this stitch. Starting with this one, this cowl was made in Premier Mega Tweed yarn, which is a super bulky yarn, and I used a 11.5 millimeter hook for this one. I will be showing you how to work this stitch in the round, and you'll be able to make this cowl in this kind of yarn if you like. But the nice thing is you can make this in any weight yarn you like. This stitch looks great in even lightweight yarns or mid-weight yarns or the bulky yarns. If you want to make this exact same one, I made this in 3 different colors. It's a total of 35 stitches. This stitch works with any multiple, so singles or doubles, doesn't matter. Meaning it can be odd number or even number, sorry. So this is worked in 3 different colors. This is their white tweed, oyster tweed, and I believe this one is called sky tweed. It's a blue color. So let me show you the next sample. For this one, I'm still working on it. This is made in a ribbon yarn from Stitch Studio by Nicole. This yarn was called, it's a discontinued yarn, Paint Box or Paintbrush, and this one I used with a J hook, which is 6.0 millimeter, and this one turned out really cool. So that's nearly finished. So you get a slightly different look with different yarns. This sample here, I have 2 different versions, which I'm going to be showing you both versions today. The first 3 rows on this, 1, 2, 3, are in what I call the simple version of the herringbone stitch. And then these bottom 3 rows are in what I call the puff version of the herringbone stitch, and I'll be teaching you both of those today. This yarn is Red Heart Colorscape in the colorway Shanghai. Here's another sample of this stitch. I put this into one of a poncho that I made. I made it as a kind of an accent part of the poncho, and this is a 5-weight yarn, and this was probably, I believe, made with either an 8 or a 9 millimeter hook. So you can see it's got a really nice definition. It's really cool. Another cool thing you can do with this stitch is to use it as an accent in different patterns. So like I've used it before in a hat, and I'll post a picture right here of this hat that I made. I made a gray hat, and I had like a red stripe through it. The hat was made in all half double crochet, and probably sometime in the future I'll get this pattern out as well. Another idea is you could put it as an accent line, like in a man's sweater or even a woman's sweater. So just a couple other ideas of how you might want to use this stitch. So what materials will you need? You'll just need some yarn, a hook that matches with the size of your yarn, a sewing needle, a yarn needle, a scissors, and a measuring tape if you're going to make the cowl, just to measure how wide around you want yours to be. Mine measures, let's see, it's about 26 inches around in circumference, and it is 7 inches, about 7 inches tall. And you can use any yarn. You know, you can use a thin yarn, you can use worsted weight, or you can use bulky. This stitch looks good in any of them. And you can also play around with the size hook that you use. I think that the thicker yarns, well, you can really just experiment with the different types of yarns. You're going to get a slightly different look depending on the thickness of the yarn. But in each yarn, I've even tried this in some thin yarns, and it still looks great. So go ahead and give that a try in some different yarns. Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to do the basic herringbone stitch. Then I'll show you how to do the puff version of this stitch. And then I'll show you how to work this stitch in the round. Okay, so we're going to start with a slip knot. And this stitch can be worked in any multiple. So I'm just going to work 8 stitches. Okay, so I did 8 chains there, and I'm just going to chain 2 to get up to the height of a half double crochet. This stitch is essentially, it's a type of half double crochet puff stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in the 3rd chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to do a half double crochet in there. So you're going to yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over, pull through a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Then you're going to do a second half double crochet in the next chain. Yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Okay, and so now we're going to begin the herringbone stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards 2 stitches, 1, 2, and we're going to go into that stitch right there. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Then we're going to do a half double crochet in the next open stitch right here. So we yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. We'll have 4 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. And then we're going to just repeat that to the end. So we're going to go backwards 2 stitches, 1, 2. Go into that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You want to pull it up to the height of the stitch, of all your stitches so far. And then we're going to do our half double crochet into the next open stitch. So we yarned over, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. And we're going to continue that to the end. A couple of things to take note of. When you're beginning this stitch, especially if you're working in lighter yarn, it will feel a little flimsy, but that's the same for the beginning of any crochet project. Go into our next stitch, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. So do that again. We go backwards 1, 2 stitches, go in there, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then half double crochet into the next open stitch, and yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. Count backwards 2 stitches, 1, 2. This one here is 3, so don't go into that one. Go in there, yarn over, pull up a loop, and half double crochet into the next open stitch, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on your hook, and so on, all the way to the last stitch. Okay, so that's our first row completed. So to turn the work, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, then we turn the work around, and this is our first stitch place right here. We're going to do a half double crochet in there, just like we did before. We're going to do 2 half double crochets, and then we do the second one, and then we begin the special stitch. So we go back 2 stitches, 1, 2, pull up a loop, yarn over, go into the next open stitch, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on your hook. Go backwards 2 stitches, 1, 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go into that next open stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. I recommend that you first try this with at least a worsted weight or a number 5 weight yarn, because it's easiest to see what you're doing, especially if you're kind of new to crochet. Okay, we're almost at the end. So when you get to the end, you might be wondering, oh, did I, am I at the last stitch here or not? You'll see, like, we're not lined up. So we do have one more stitch. That's kind of one of the easiest ways. And there it is right there. So we're going to go backwards 1, 2, yarn over, pull up that loop, and we do a half double crochet right into this last stitch here. That's that one you don't want to miss. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and now you can see our piece is squared off. And you just continue with that. You just chain 2, and the chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch. It's just to get you to the height for working your rows. Sorry, working your half double crochets. So we're going to do 2 half double crochets, and then we begin the process all over again. Go backwards 1, 2 stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop, and I'll show you one other thing. When you're going into your next stitch, you're always going under these V's here. That's how you know where your next stitch is. Go backwards 1, 2, yarn over, and half double crochet. So we just do that all the way to the end. Oops. And this fabric has a thick feel to it, has a stiff feel to it. And don't forget, your last stitch can kind of can kind of be hiding over there at the very end. So don't forget that guy. Go right under those two threads. All right, so that's what the basic herringbone stitch looks like. Okay, so to make the puff version of the herringbone stitch, we're going to also start with a slip knot. And I'm just going to do the same amount of stitches. I'm going to do 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chains to start. Those are my 8 stitches, and then I'm going to chain 2 to get to the height of my first half double crochet. So we're going to do 2 half double crochets just like we do in the basic version. It's 1. That was in the 3rd chain from the hook. And 2. Now for the puff version, like the basic version, we're going to go backwards 2 stitches. We're going to go into that stitch and we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And what we're going to do different is we're going to yarn over again, go into that stitch again, yarn over and pull up another loop. So now we have 4 loops on our hook before we even start our half double crochet. But now we're going to start the half double crochet in the next open stitch. So we yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and now we have 6 loops on our hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to yarn over and pull through all 6 loops. Okay, so let's do that again. We're going to go backwards 2 stitches. 1, 2. I'm going to go into that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. I'm getting caught on some yarn here. Let me try that again. 1. There it is. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Then I yarn over and I go into that stitch again, yarn over, pull up a loop. 4 loops on the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to do a half double crochet in my next open stitch, yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we have 6 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 6. So we'll do it again. Go backwards 2 stitches. 1, 2. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and go back into that stitch again. Yarn over and pull up another loop. And half double crochet into the next stitch. Okay, so we just do that all the way down the line until you get to the last stitch. And sometimes it can be a little challenging getting through all of 6 of those loops. But what I have found is that as you're doing this stitch, like any other stitch in crochet, what happens is your hands kind of figure out the subtle movements that are going to help you get through, and you get better and faster as you go through it. So don't worry if it's a little challenging in the beginning. You'll kind of find the right height for your loops to get through them more easily. So that's our first row completed in the puff version of the herringbone stitch. So now we just do the same thing that we do in the regular. we're going to chain 2 and turn our work. And then on the reverse side, we're just going to do the same thing all over again. So we're going to start with a half double crochet in the first stitch. So this right here is our first stitch. This was where we turned our work. That's our chain 2. So it's not this little opening on the end. It's this first stitch here. So we're going to do a half double crochet in there. We're going to do a half double crochet in the next stitch, and again we're going under these 2 threads, these V's. Yarn over, go under those 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. So we've got our 2 half double crochets, and now we just do the same thing all over again. We're going to go backwards 2 stitches, 1, 2, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, bring it up to the height of your stitch, then we yarn over, go back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You now have 4 loops on your hook, and then we're going to do a half double crochet in this next stitch right here. So yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and now we have 6 loops on our hook, and we yarn over and pull through all 6 of those. And we repeat that to the end. Go back 2 stitches. There's 1, there's 2. Go right into that stitch there. Yarn over, pull up a loop to the height of your stitches. Yarn over, go back into that stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop. And then we're going to do a half double crochet into this next stitch right here, the next open stitch. Yarn over, go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 6 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 6. And just do that all the way to the end. Oops, going a little too fast there. Okay, and we're not done. You can see it's not lining up yet. We've got this one last stitch right here to go into. So go backwards 2 stitches and do our final half double crochet in there. And there's our second row completed. So, and then you just begin the next row the exact same way. Chain 2 and work 2 half double crochets, and then the herringbone stitch across. So let me just work this a couple more rows to show you the difference between the simple and the puff stitch. I'm on the last stitch of this 4th row, and again you can see that we're not done yet because it's not lined up. It's just an easy way to make sure that you don't miss this last stitch that's right here. It can be easy to not see it. It's kind of hiding right there. And when you pull up that first loop to that height, you can kind of hold it in place. When you go back in for the second time. Okay, so let's compare this one with the simple one, or the basic one. This is the puff stitch version. And this here is the simple version. So you can see the puff stitch version has more threads in it, in its herringbone, and the simple one is more single herringbone. These are both 4 rows, so you can see this builds up a little higher, and I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's also definitely thicker and even more sturdy. So if you're working, if you want something to be really bulky, use this stitch, or if you're working with a really thin yarn and you want it to have more substance to it, you could use the puff version. And then the single version is still pretty thick, but just experiment with your yarn to see what you like best. So now I'm going to show you how to work this in the round. Okay, so for crocheting in the round, I'm going to make a sample one for my mug here, my coffee mug. It'll also be something I could wear as a cuff around my wrist. So I'm going to measure this, and let's see how big this is. So this coffee mug is 10 inches around. So I'm going to do a chain that's 10 inches long. So I'm going to start with a slip knot, and again, this can be in any multiple. It can be odd number or even number, it doesn't matter. So I'm just chaining until I have the length that matches what I need. If you're making a cowl, just chain the amount that is the length of the circumference you want for your cowl. Okay, so once you have the length that you desire, you're going to go along that chain, along all the V's, being careful not to twist your work, all the way to the last one. And you're going to go into that chain, and you're going to do a slip stitch. And the way that we do that is we have this loop on our hook. Make sure that that loop is just snug around the hook. I've gone into that first chain. I'm going to yarn over and pull through a loop, and then I'm going to pull it through the loop that's on my hook. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 2, just like we do when we're working this flat. And I'm just going to go right into that same stitch that I went into to do the slip stitch, and I'm going to do my first half double crochet. So yarn over, go into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. That's our first half double crochet completed. Now we do a second one, yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through all 3. Okay, so that's our first 2 half double crochets completed. And just like in the flat version, we work the stitch the same. So we're going to go back 2 stitches, 1, 2, and I'm going to be working this in the simple version, or the basic version of the herringbone stitch. We pull up a loop, we're going to yarn over and go into the next open space and do our half double crochet. So yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we have 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. All right, and we're going to work that all the way around. So let's do that again. We're going to go back 2 stitches, 1 and 2, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull it up to the height of our stitches, and then we're going to go into our next open chain and do the half double crochet. So yarn over, go into that chain, and when you go into chains, if you're newer to crochet, you can go under 1 thread like I'm doing here, or you can go under 2 threads. It doesn't matter as long as you just do the same with each stitch. And then we yarn over and pull through all 4. Let's do that again. We go backwards 2 stitches. There's 1 and there's 2. And once you get going, you can tell where you're going, because you're going to have these herringbone strands. You're going to know it's the one right in front of that. So yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and go into the next open stitch. Yarn over, pull through 4 loops. You just keep doing that. So we go backwards 2. 1, there's 2 right there. When you're working with yarn that is has multicolors like this one, you just have to look a little bit more carefully. Yarn over, go into the next stitch. Let's look at that one more time. So we're going to go backwards 2 stitches, 1, and there's the second one. There's our second one right there. And as you go along, it gets easier and easier. It's just the first row that's the first row is the hardest. So you're going to do this all the way around. I want to show you one more thing if you're a beginner. So we're going to do another stitch. So we've got our 1, 2. Let's go into that. Going to yarn over and pull up that loop. And sometimes when you're working into chains, it can be hard to know, like, where do I go? So this is the stitch of the last chain, and this is our next open stitch. You can see there's a V there. Okay, I'm working into the top thread, just 1, but if you were working into 2, you'd go under this one and this one. So you know, you're not going in down here, because that was this here and this here were these 2. So this stitch gets a little stretched out, and sometimes it can be a little hard. You might think, oh, do I go in here? No, you go into this whole next stitch that's completely, you know, untouched, that next V. So hopefully that's a little helpful if you're newer to crochet. So just continue with that to the end. Also, if you're newer, you may be saying, I can't see that second stitch. Where is it? So let me help you see where that is. So every of your stitches has 2 threads at the bottom of it. 1, 2. And if you come over to the next one, you can see that 1, 2 right there. So that's how you know where your next stitch is. It's a little tight, but you just go under those 2 and pull up your loop. Go to our next stitch. It's easier when you're working with yarn that doesn't have this variegation in the colors. But there's 1, And there's our 2. This one's much harder to see. There it is. There's the 2 threads, 1, 2, on either, next to both of my thumbs there. So if you are new to crochet, you might want to work with, you know, single colored yarn when you're first learning the stitch. And then once you get it, you can work with any color yarn. Okay, so here we are at the end, and let's take a look. It's always, when you're working in the round, the trickiest part, I think, is knowing where your last stitch is. So here's the stitch that we just completed. You can see those 2 threads pulling up on that chain. And then we have another chain here, and then we have another, it looks like it might be a chain, but is it? That one is not. This one here is not, because that's where our first stitch came out of. All right, so that means that this one right here is our last stitch. It's the last one that doesn't have another stitch attached to it. So we're going to work this the way we work all the others. We're going to, I had actually started it there. We're going to go back to 1, 2, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and go into that last stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and we complete the stitch. And then to close out the round, we are going to go into, you're going to have 2 chains, 1, 1, 2, and these 2 threads here, that's going to be your first stitch, and that's where we're going to go into for making our slip knot. So snug up on your loop, go under those 2 threads, yarn over, pull through a loop, and slip stitch it to the loop that's on your hook. And you just completed your first round. Now, with herringbone crochet, you notice that on one row, the stripes go this way, or the threads, and then on the next round they go this way. So oftentimes when you're working in the round with crochet, you will just continue working in the same direction the whole time. But if we do that, our threads will all be going in the same direction. And you could certainly do that for a different kind of a look. But what we're going to do is we're going to work in the round and turn our work on each row. So we've done our slip stitch, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to turn our work. And we're going to work, just kind of turn it inside out, work from the other side. So we're going to go right into this first stitch right here and do our first half double crochet, and then a half double crochet in the next one. And then we're just going to work in the herringbone stitch. So we're going to go backwards 2 stitches, 1, 2, and you can see now that we're on our second row, it's much easier to see them. Go into that second stitch, pull up a loop, get it to the height we need it at, yarn over, and go into the next open stitch. And yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. So we go back 2 stitches, yarn over, go into the next open stitch right there. You see those V's. Go under those 2 threads, yarn over, pull up a loop, All right, and you're just going to continue doing that all the way around to the end, and I'll meet you at the end for showing you the slip stitch again. And you can see how we're getting our threads going in the opposite direction for that herringbone look. Okay, so here we are on, let's take a look at what we've got here. We actually have 2 stitches left, because this one here, you can see there is the first stitch coming out of that one. So that's not our last stitch, this is here. So we've got 2 left. I started this second to last one. Go under those 2 threads. Go back 2 stitches. And so let's complete this, and then I'm going to tell you something else. So we're going to look for our chain 2, which was right here. That first chain is a little hard to see. 1, 2. So this is our first stitch up here. We're going to go underneath those 2 threads to do our slip stitch. Snug this up on your hook, yarn over, pull through a loop, and then slip stitch that through the loop on your hook. Okay, and now do you remember what comes next? We're going to chain 2, and then what are we going to do? We're going to turn our work. Just flip this inside out and work your next row, starting with going right into that first stitch right there with your half double crochets. You do 2 of those, and then you start the herringbone stitch. And even though this kind of yarn is a little bit more difficult just for the starting, it can be really worth it, because you're going to get a very pretty effect with the herringbone stitch using yarn that has some variegation in it. So I'm going to complete this, and then I'll come back and show you it at the end. So go ahead and continue with yours, and meet me back at the end. And just one last reminder, when you get to the end of each of your rows, make sure you turn your work and work back the other way. Of course, if you want to work in that direction, you could mix that up and play with that, where you have them all going in the same direction. So something to consider as well. So I just finished my slip stitch. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to pull that through, and my little mug cozy is complete. And there it is, herringbone mug cozy, or you may make it as a cowl. So stay tuned for the end of this video, where I will have pictures of other projects using this stitch. And please be sure to give this a like, and please subscribe below and hit that notify bell so that you will be alerted each week when my free videos come out. Thank you for joining, and please share, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.